Armen, tell us a little bit about this health pass. What is it exactly, and how does it work?
Right, so just to clear one thing up, it has been called by critics a vaccine passport. Technically, it's not that, because a vaccine passport requires proof of vaccination to do whatever you're trying to do. At the moment, it's still possible to do those everyday things, go to a cafe, go to a restaurant, but it's a lot more hassle for somebody who's not vaccinated, because as of today, that person has to show a negative test, whether that's an antigen test or a PCR. So it means simply going to have a coffee on a terrace where there's not many people about, out in the open air. Even that requires a negative test. So it probably will keep a lot of unvaccinated people away from those places. But technically, it's still possible to do all those things, even for those who are not vaccinated. The goal here, quite obviously, is to push everyone towards vaccination. But where I think you're going to really have a two-tier society is from October, when those PCR tests and antigen tests are going to be, people will have to pay for those. So at that point, people essentially will be paying, the unvaccinated will be paying to do the same things that vaccinated people will be able to do without any problem, going into a restaurant, going into a cafe, and so on. So that's where you're really going to have a much bigger divide than what already exists in French society.
Now, we've seen some pretty major protests across France in recent weeks against this pass. Why is it so controversial?
Well, if you look at the Human Rights Ombudsman of France, their report was quite scathing, actually, at the end of July. That's before the health pass went through these various different, legal bodies, Kate. But the Ombudsman said there was a risk of discrimination in employment, because obviously, many employees will have been vaccinated, but some won't have been. She said that it was one of the most problematic aspects was having healthcare workers, compulsory vaccination for healthcare workers. That has now been approved, by the way, by the Constitutional Council here in France. And she also mentioned that there was a problematic aspect, which was the control of French citizens by other French citizens. She said that normally it's up to the police to check something like a health pass, but as anyone who's been into a cafe today in France knows, it's actually not police checking that. It's simply the owner of a bar or cafe that is checking the health passes. So that's some of the problems that the Human Rights Ombudsman identified. There's another aspect a lot of people have pointed out, which is the inconsistencies in all of this and the application of how it's applied, Kate. So, for example, the French police, they don't have to have a health pass, but firefighters do. MPs, if they're going to vote in the chamber of the National Assembly, they don't need the health pass. But if you go to a museum, which is much less crowded often, it depends obviously what time of day you go, but you do need it for that. Long distance trains, you need a health pass, but at rush hour in the RER or short distance trains, which are absolutely packed, there's no health pass. So this is the French are very used to these contradictions throughout all the different stages of this whole pandemic crisis, Kate. But is the government really worried about the contradictions and the protests? I suspect the government will be looking mostly at the latest vaccination figures and taking heart from those. Just to show you these figures from, I think we have a graphic from the Tous Anti-COVID app, which is from the 5th of August. So it's a few days ago. I don't think they've collected the latest figures because we're at the start of the next week. But anyway, 63.5%, according to the app, of the French population is fully vaccinated, i.e. 2 doses, and that includes people over 12 as well. So the government will be looking at that as a sign of France going where it wants France to go, which is obviously full vaccination.
Lots for people to wrap their heads around there as we get these new changes for France. Thanks, Armen Georgian, for that update.